Hi there everyone, it's Jaakko here. Today I want to take a look at this concrete substance that I created recently, and I noticed there isn't so many good concrete materials that are either they are stylized and just like goofy looking, or then they are just too much grungy and they are just like totally just smashed in kind of type of materials. And what I need is sort of a base material that I can build on. I can just use this to basically anytime when I need to put some concrete floors on walls or things like that, and then I can just add detailed some kind of leaks or something like that to these, or basically just use this as it is. And yes, I'd like to share with you some techniques that I use, something that I think are pretty interesting and pretty easy to do. So let's jump in and see what we can come up with. So here it is. This is the graph, and it's not too bad. It's pretty logically, I think, pretty logically arranged, and I can actually show you guys a couple of these input parameters that I've exposed, and these allow to change these basically on real time. If you're using Marmoset toolpack or something, you can just adjust these in real time and then come up with different type of a material. So first thing, obviously, when you start to use it, because sometimes some people buy this from Gumroad, these substances from Gumroad, and then they come with me and say like, "Whoa, it looks so blurred, and it's nothing what looks like in your videos." So it makes sense to just come here and change this size to absolute, and just put like, I don't know, 4K in here, so we can actually see something what we are doing. So it's just the way how substances work is that you should, when you publish them, you should use relative to parent, because in that way just the whole graph is going to execute faster. So it's just a little thing. If you get this substance and then you want to use it, just make sure that you use whatever you're doing with it, and just use a proper resolution. So there's something. So about these input parameters that I've exposed, I've got a base color, which is those scratches in here. And then also have the brightness of this base color, so you can adjust how bright the base color appears. And then I've got like cracks in here. So what this crack scale means is that you can adjust the scale of those cracks that are there, and also the strength of them. So you can, if you put 0 in here, it turns them off completely. And then I've got like just a little bit additional grunge on the roughness, and then I've got like a saturation of the base color as well, and then I've got the normal adjustment values for those small holes in there, and then also the bumpiness, these sort of bumps. When you look at it from here, you can see that there's like something going on those, and I'm gonna show you guys just in a minute that how this is done. So yes, so the whole thing, I've actually used some reference. So I love this program, this Pure Ref. So you can get this. I'm gonna put the link to this application in the description of this video. So just see that you can get this application. This is a donationware, so if you really just don't want to pay, then you just can download it for free, but it's nice to support, of course, the creators of these. So what this PureRef is that it allows us to place basically images on the screen anywhere you want, and this you can put it so that it stays on top, and you have like multiple reference images, and this is a brilliant way to work. I can't live without this program. So when I'm doing some substance like that, I'm just grab some reference images from the internet or from my iPhone, and then place them in here, and this allows me to just keep this on view. I don't have to use a separate monitor for that. It's a very nice way to work, and you can zoom in with a scroll wheel. You can just zoom in and out of that, and you can have a multiple them. You can arrange them as you like, and have like one more in here, and just very, very smooth. So this is an application that I absolutely just love. So I grab some images of this concrete and place them in here, and then just keep looking at this when I'm building, so I'm not going too far from the reference. So yes, so the first thing that I notice is obvious about concrete is these holes. are called pitting, and I think that's something to do with air bubbles that are trapped in the concrete, and then the air bubbles escape and they leave those holes, which are called pitting, it seems. So the way how I've done that is that I've created two different noises and then blend them together. So first I just use this blue noise fast, and then use histogram scan to isolate those small dots, and then blur them using blur HQ grayscale, so it gives us pretty round shapes. If you use the faster blur, it doesn't give you so round, it gives you kind of blocked shape. So it's good to use HQ, and then I've used levels to tighten them all up a little bit, and then I use the blend, and then I'm just coming here with the same. I'm using the dirt 5 and histogram scan to again isolate those, and then I use the blur, just the normal blur in this case. You can see that it's a little bit blocky in those, so but it doesn't seem to be too much of a problem. So I have to use a blur HQ grayscale again to a little bit more rounded kind of type of a effect, and then this is blending them together using add linear dodge. So I'm just using a little small value because I don't want to have too much of that going, because this is gonna be going to the this noise is going to be going to the color value, to the base color. I do not want to have too much of that, because it's going to be too noisy or something like that, if I remember right. So so then what I've done is that I've started to do the base color. So the base color is very simple. I'm just taking a fractal sum in here and then dirt 4 in here, and basically just adjust those. I think I'm just using this as it is actually. So I use actually these gradient maps in here, and I put some blue values, because often I notice that in concrete you have these blue values and then you have these sort of a little bit color values. It's not just gray, there's like more color values than just gray values. So that's something that is good to always keep in mind when you look at the reference. You notice that it's not just, because obviously if you ask someone what color is concrete, the people are going to say it's gray, right? It's more than gray. And adding these color variation and these small very subtle details, it really helps to make this more realistic. And then I've also done another here, and what I did was just use gradient editor and pick gradient, and I just like drag along here, like you can do it like that. And then this allows us to just sample values from images like that. So yeah, something like that. If you want to try, sometimes it's good to do it multiple times and then just pick the one that turns out best. So it's a very fast way to come up with gradients such as this. So what this gradient is of course doing is that it's just taking these monochrome image and then mapping some color values on that based on the positions of this gradient. So then I'm just blending it together. So this is the final the base color value for this concrete. So what should we look at next? So I'm gonna get to the normal detail later, so I'm gonna move to these areas in. So then I have this flaking, and this was actually pretty fun to do. So when you look at this, you can see that there's some kind of like a interesting kind of like a bumpiness in here. This kind of like a, it looks like some kind of like cracks, but it's not so sharp, and it's not like really. You can see, for example, here we have like these areas that are sort of raised, and some of them like pushed in, and this was actually a pretty interesting thing to do. So what I did was that I used like this first this warp, and this is just like fine lines that are like so in here, and then so this is basically this gradient linear and then the styling, so it gives us these lines. And then I did this warp and used the purling noise to drive the warp. And then I did what I did was I used slope blur grayscale, and what this was that I just basically this just messed this up completely. It just takes this as a sort of a driver, and then it creates these kind of like flakes. I don't know what those are cold, but it gives us this kind of effect that sometimes you can see in concrete. So this gives us like these nice slopes. And the slope blur grayscale is really useful for many things. You can do like some if you're putting some dripping, like dripping wet dirt is dripping, you can use these, use just a gradient as a slope, or then you can also do some cracks and then give those nice little like sort of like chipped edges. It's hard to put it into words, but yeah, I hope that makes some sense. So then what I've again done is just use blur a little bit. I'm just mixing these to the normal, so it gives us this detail. So if you compare it to this is without that, and then this is with those. And this, I really like this somehow. There's some areas that are raised and some are like different levels of those chips, or what are those, like those cracks, something like so. So yes, and then again just use gradient map. I'm just gonna very tiny amount of multiply on the color, base color, so that we have more variation. And it's just, this isn't like too drastic, but it's just a little bit in there. Again, more variation means more realism, because in real life we have tons of course chaotic type of variation in those materials. So then I got these cracks, and this was really pretty fun to do. So what I've done is that I used this cells 3, and what this gives us is this sort of like a crack pattern, and I'm actually just do that. Cells 3, put this in here so we can see, maybe invert this so we can see it better. So you can see that this gives us this kind of crackle pattern. It's really useful to do this type of things. So we just need to adjust it a little bit. So what I've done is that just use some values in here and actually expose the scale so that the users can put a smaller or bigger cracks if they want when they're using this substance. So yeah, so I've done that, and then did gradient map to sort of change the values a little bit, and then just did some blur this, and then again some histogram scan. So I just did the sharpen here as well, and then this histogram scan, which sort of just hides most of it. It leaves a couple of those, because I don't want too much of that. I just want this to be just a tiny little bit cracks, because it's gonna be again probably used tileable type of material, and if you have too many cracks, it's gonna be looking just too obvious. So I wanted to keep this detail as subtle as possible. And then again I did warp in here, and then just drive this warp with Gaussian spots, so this gives us more organic look to these cracks, so they are not so straight. And then a slope blur grayscale, and this is just again a nice way to sort of break it up more, like so. And then I'm driving this slope blur grayscale with using the BNV spots node, and then I've tightened this up with levels. I'm just pushing up those, crushing those black values and making them more visible. And then I just use blur, and then I have this cracks intensity node, which is just a blend node, and then I'm just exposed to opacity, so it's just blending this white value that when people decrease the opacity, then the white, it's just gonna turn white, and then it's gonna make these cracks invisible, so you can basically turn them off and on if you want. Alright, so then again what I'm done, I just did some scratches in here. I just used the scratch generator and invert that and turn it into color values, and then blending it. So what this is, just gives us these like slight scratches that are only visible in the base color. And then I'm just adjust levels and did this HSL, hue, saturation, lightness, and expose saturation and lightness, so that the users can control those values. So then we can take a look at the base color. So you can see I've added those cracks and those spots in here. So I'm not sure if this is the best way to do, because in PBR workflow nowadays the cavity and ambient occlusion should be like separated in their own map, but in this case this is a cavity detail and it's gonna be so small that the people are not gonna be, the lighting isn't really gonna affect this so much, so that if you have bright light shining into this, those cracks are still gonna appear dark because they maybe have some dust in them or something like that. So I'm sort of not quite sure if I should actually just put another output for those cavity maps, or those small ambient occlusion things that happens in those small holes, because they are just so small. It would be another if we have like some sort of larger hole in here or something like that, then that would be different because it's gonna be larger. But this cavity information, it's maybe okay to just multiply that into the base color. So maybe we can take a look at how I've done that. So what I've done here, I used this PBR base material node, which allows us to come up quickly with good values for your graphs, and it's just something that I prefer to do because I could also, like, of course, add some individual like uniform color nodes to come up with something. But yes, this is something that you can do if you want to do like a PBR accurate metal, for example. You can use this for that, but we're not doing metal, of course. We just adjust those metallic values to black and then roughness values to something that is correct for concrete. So I've done that, also the base color like that, and then I'm just starting to mix these guys. So I'm doing this and then I'm mixing it to that, and then I'm taking different values and blending them. For example, I've got these white specks in here, which is again just a dirt node, and then levels adjusted, and then put some grunge in there as well, and doing like so, and then do gradient map to convert that to color values and then blend that in, and then this is gonna be what it looks like. And then I've done also, I do another blend. So here I'm just putting those specks here, blending them in, and then I'm also getting those cracks. So I'm taking these cracks intensity from here, and again I have this gradient map which I've just collapsed. So you can collapse those by hitting D on your keyboard to make your graph a little bit neat looking. So now we have like this type of a result here, and then I've got another blend and I'm grabbing these values, these crackle things in here. I'm just putting a little bit like darkened areas in here, which gives us a little bit more realism. And then I'm putting those white scratches and doing like as I showed you guys earlier. So then the normal, I'm just grabbing a base normal value from this PBR base material here, and I'm grabbing these. I'm taking like a fractal sum base and grabbing some of this detail which we used for the base color, and then I'm blending them together, and then use this height normal blender, and I'm exposed the normal intensity so that this strength of this normal detail can be adjusted. And then also what I've done here is that I took those crackles which gives us this detail. So again, taking this and using height normal blend node to put that in there, and I'll again well, there's actually this intensity is actually just I come up with this value, and I think this is good for most uses. So, and then what I've done again is did another normal blend, and this is doing just it put those cracks in there, so you can see those crack patterns in there. And then these small holes, this pitting can be adjusted, so I've exposed this. So this is again another height normal blend, and it's just coming from here, from this. And then I have also those smaller holes, and they are just coming again from this node in here. So I've just adjusted the levels to make those like small holes, and then again both of these are exposed, so can be adjusted. And this is the final normal output. So then the roughness is not, there's nothing much going on here. It's just pretty much because again, when I created this material, I want it to be just sort of a base material, that I don't want to have too much like a roughness detail going on here, because then that can be added later, and I can just add some, if I want to use this some kind of a flow where it's like puddles of water or something like that, then I can just use these and then add. So recently what I want to do is that come up with these good base materials that are as versatile as possible and as realistic as possible as a base materials, not like too much detailed artistic stuff going on. So but I've done just a little bit like I've taken like this value here to add a little bit like variation, because it's good to have variation even if it's not too obvious. And then again I've adjusted some levels in here, and I'm just taking this crunch and I'm just like putting it tiny little bit in there, and then use multiply on that, and then expose the opacity so we can adjust this roughness, how much roughness we want to have in there. And this is the final roughness. So it's very simple, and it's very well rough. It's a concrete, so concrete is probably one of those roughest type of materials. And again, metallic is no value, and then height, I don't have any height information here. I could probably try to put those cracks in there, but again, if you think about how you use height, is normally more like bigger details, like again, if you have like holes in here, some kind of like a horizontal lines or some kind of details like that, then it's good. But I don't think that doing a microscopic detail like that and putting it to height will serve any purpose. So I'm just leaving the height as a basic value, like so. So I think this pretty much covers it. I hope this makes some sense, and if you have some questions, you can just leave it to the comments section, and I try my best to come up with an answers. So again, if you want to get this substance, this is available in Gumroad for $5, so just grab that and you can have this source file and also the ready-made, ready-to-go substance SPSR file. So yes, this was Jaakko. I hope you enjoyed this little breakdown on concrete material. I'll hope to see you in the next video. So goodbye.